wanna do to me. Yeah. Love it when you say to me anything and everything.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our virtual event to cap off what's been a really, really outstanding series of actions in this year's version of the National Organization Stand Against Racism. We're probably going to get going here in a couple of minutes. We're just going to let the participants flow in a little bit more. Really appreciate all of you spending time with us this evening when you could be watching the Oscars. And we will get rolling with some amazing speakers here in a couple of minutes.
The future of dual immersion, that's what made me decide that I wanted to continue my degree.
Ooh, bet I look good in some sheets. It's been a long week. Think I'm finna kick up my feet. I'm craving isolation and a few tangerines. I crave a little me time on my free time, but time be moving slow. But ain't no stagger when I step. I'm a casual man, so I always watch before I tread. I ain't mad, I'm just trying to get my ass about this bed. It's real hard to ease pressure off of ties around your neck. It's hard. Shut up. It's hard.
Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Margaret France. Danny, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, I think this is a good time for us to center before we come together and listen to some of the voices that I'm so excited that we have with us this evening. Before we hear from our speakers, I think it's really important. My name is Margaret France, and I am the chair of the Social Justice Committee with Tiara Welch. And this evening, before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that we gather today on land America took by force from the Yakama Nation. Many of us benefit from resources gained through the labor of kidnapped and enslaved Black people, to whom we owe not only the foundation of the United States material wealth, but the vast majority of its cultural contributions to the rest of the world. Most of the goods we prize and consume are created or delivered by people working under unsafe conditions for wages that promise little security for their families. Please share with us a moment of silence in recognition of the unprecedented violence and exploitation that allows us the comfort to connect with each other today. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Next slide, please. So One of the things that we want to make here is a safe space for people to talk about their experiences as people living in this valley. And for that reason, we will not be using chat, will not be using hand raising or Q&A. We want this to be a place where we will listen to each other. Next slide. And so that we're in a place where we can listen to these stories and take them in, we're very fortunate to have Carolise Beltran lead us in a grounding exercise. Carolise is a counselor specializing in bringing people the tools they need to incite and embrace change. She's very passionate about Safe Yakima Valley's youth mentoring project and the Tortas from Blue Hills Taqueria. Carolise, please lead us in a grounding exercise so that we're ready to receive.
Thank you, Margaret. It's been a very big week for the entire nation. And there was a great cause for celebration. And at the same time, we were all working through grief. So I would like to ask you to join me in this grounding exercise where we are going to create a space for the next hour where our souls can take exactly what they need and leave behind, even for a moment, all of the heaviness and the concerns and the pressure and the grief. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if you are comfortable with that, but if you prefer to keep your eyes open, that is perfectly fine. And take a deep breath with me. If you are sitting on a chair, feel your feet planted on the ground and feel your hands resting on your thighs or the side of your chair. And as you take another deep breath, come to the crown of your head and rest there for a moment. And I'd like you to notice what sensations you're experiencing right at the top of your head. We usually don't think much about this. And let that part of you take exactly what it needs. And with another deep breath, calm down to your ears, down to your jaw. And notice if there is any sort of tension. If there is, you can release as much as you like just for the next hour. With a deep breath, come down to your neck and your shoulders and notice what is happening there. Maybe you already know what you need, but maybe you don't, and that is okay. Your body is wise. So go ahead and take another deep breath and let your neck and shoulders take exactly what they need and release what you don't need or you don't want. And with another deep breath, come down to the center of your heart and notice the sensations there. And in this place, I like you to bring in, with a deep breath, all the love that you pour out to your community, to your people, the people at work, the people at home, friends. With a big, big, deep breath, I would like you to bring in all of that love, all to yourself, all at once. And as you exhale, release whatever you don't need or you don't want, even just for an hour. With another deep breath, come down into your belly and let that part of your body take anything that it needs and release what you don't want or you don't need. Trusting that for the next hour, this space is created for your soul, for your heart. You are safe. Nothing is an emergency for the next hour. And then come down right below your belly button. And notice the sensations in this place. And as you breathe, I want you to allow all good things that come into your life to stay and take up residence in every part of your life. You deserve good things. It's okay to allow good things. We were made for joy. We deserve to be safe. We deserve to live in community and feel loved. And then if you feel ready, come down into your base, the end of your spine, and breathe into it. Breathe into it until you feel like you are rooted into your space. And I want you to remember that for the next hour, you are safe and that this space was made for you. And allow your body to take what it needs and to let go of what it doesn't need. And with a giant, deep, deep breath, we are going to breathe into the plant of our feet. And when you're ready, exhale all the weight on your shoulders, all the weight of the world, all the pressures of the day, of the week, of the month, of the year, of last year. And let them go for the next hour. And with one final deep cleansing breath, bring in everything you need. Allow it to settle into your body. And when you feel ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. And gently and comforting, we're going to enjoy the rest of the webinar. Ready, set, go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carolise. Thank you for centering us so that we can receive. And I'm very excited to receive from all of these speakers. Our first speaker is Dori Peralta Baker. She's a very familiar force in the Valley, a fierce Filipino organizer who spearheads the Asia Pacific Island Coalition, Yakima Valley, a coalition that is about improving civic engagement for API and registering all people to vote. So please welcome Dori Peralta Baker.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about the Asian Pacific Island um, group here in Yakima Valley. My first slide just gives you some data about who we are and what we're doing here. The first slide, please. Okay, so the 2020 data for the Asian Pacific Islanders, there is 470,752 voters. If you look at some of the stats, between 2012 and 2018, the number of eligible API voters in Washington state grew 43%. And then the ages for the youth comprise 26% of the citizen voting age population. And then the Asian Pacific Islanders age 50 and over comprise 36% of the voting age population. This is something very interesting, and you may not know this, but in 2020, the highest paid race or ethnicity of Washington workers are Asians, and that there is 102% population growth rate since 2000. So the projection by 2025, Asians and Asian Pacific Islanders will surpass Latinx as a major minority in Washington state. So this is what is happening here in Yakima Valley, and we're growing, and we want to be part of the change that's coming to our valley, and I just wanted to share that information with you. So our immigrants arrived here beginning in the 1800s. The Chinese were followed by the Japanese and then the Filipinos. They mined gold and coal, worked on the railroad and in the salmon processing canneries. Between March 19, 2020 and February 28, 21, the Stop Hate Asian Hate Reporting Center received over 3,795 anti-Asian incidents of racial bias. The true number of incidences is likely to be significantly higher because many APIs do not report incidents of racial bias. So this has been a rude awakening for our millennials and our Gen X youth. Their parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents did not share their racial discrimination struggles with the younger generation. That generation suffered in silence and wanted their children to be free and to have a good education and become professionals. They wanted them to homogenize and become Americans. Now, these second and third generation Asian Americans are being told to, right now, go back to Asia. Many are going into self-analysis and are very troubled. Now they are treated or perceived as immigrants. For many, they learn their racial struggles from their college ethnic study classes. They didn't hear it at home. The BIPOC community must ensure that U.S. history is rewritten with factual truths, and our seniors must, what they say in Hawaii, talk story to their children and grandchildren to pass these struggles along so they appreciate the freedoms that they have now. Next slide, please. The U.S. curriculum for U.S. history has to change. This is a May 10th, 1996 textbook photo of the Golden Spike at Promontory Summit in Utah. And if you look very closely, there is not one Chinese in that picture. Next slide, please. So we're rewriting history here. May 10th, 2014, descendants of the Chinese laborers reclaim railroads history. So this is just one factor, one correction that really needs to be changed in our US history to give support and give credence to the hardworking immigrants that came here to the United States. They had struggles, and many of our younger people do not know that. The Chinese Exclusion Act of May 6, 1882 prohibited all immigration of Chinese laborers. The California Alien Land Law of 1914, adopted by Washington State, prohibited aliens ineligible for citizenship from owning agricultural land or processing long-term leases. The Tidings-McDuffie Act of March 24th, 1934, the act reclassified all Filipinos, including those who were living in the United States, as aliens for the purposes of immigration to America. A quota of 50 immigrants per year was established. That recently happened to our Muslim friends in just recently at the airport, and that was something we had not anticipated. And then lastly, and the most recent, is the internment of Japanese Americans in the United States during World War II. They were forced to relocate and were incarcerated in concentration camps in the western interior of the country. 62% of the internees were US citizens. And they even had a troop that went and fought during the war to show their patriotism. So these are struggles that the APIs have had. And really, we need to be reminded that some of our freedoms we fought very hard for. One of the things I just read about, and I'll have to, if somebody's interested, I can get them the information or the book that I read. But between 1942 and 1944, Wapato was the headquarters for the Ku Klux Klan. And that was just an amazing fact that I had not realized. Slide 5, please. This is a historical photo from the Filipino American community. And it depicts, in the center there is Chief Job Charlie. And the occasion was his agreement to lease land to the Filipinos so they could farm and settle in Yakima Valley. Filipinos could not own US property, and in the early 1940s met with Chief Job Charlie to ask permission to lease land on the Yakima Reservation. So this was a good reason why the Japanese and the Filipinos are farming in the Lower Valley. Slide 6. This is one of my favorite photos. It's during the Harvest Festival in Wapato. These young ladies are members of Batang Wapato, the Filipino youth folk dance group. The pioneer immigrants that first arrived in Yakima Valley brought their culture and traditions with them. The fruit trees, grapes, hops, and truck farms are all part of the rich diversity of Yakima Valley. We embrace these cultural differences and hope to learn and understand more from future generations. Last slide. I take this at heart. It's framed in my office. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. That was Dory Peralta Baker. And I think that it's very appropriate that we are, that toward the end of her presentation, she mentioned the historical connection between the Filipino community in the Lower Valley and the Yakima Nation. It connects us with our next speaker. We're very proud to have Emily Washins, who is a member of the Yakima Nation who lives on tribal land, current tribal land, not historic tribal land. We are all many of us at least currently on historical tribal land. And she is a colleague of mine at Yakima Valley College, and she runs nativefriends.com, a website for more information about her tribe. So please join me in welcoming Emily Washeen.
Hello, everybody. Shach Klawit and Yimenaimima. Thank you so much for having me here today to just have a conversation about, the things that are going on in our valley and in our world. I appreciate Dory's presentation so much, and the photo that she showed. I remember learning about the leasing of land from Yakimas, and I really appreciate that insight. And overall, I think back to the learning moments that I've had in this valley. I know we're a smaller area, and it's usually, somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. And those are the things that I really hold close and dear to me. I think that there's so many things that you can learn in the classroom or in conversations like this. And it's not necessarily just the first time you hear it, but it's again and again and again and reconnecting to it. And pretty soon you're eating Filipino food, and the Filipino elders telling you, you're the one that always eats all our food. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit. I want to talk and kind of grow about this. How do we connect, and how do we conversate about things even when they're uncomfortable, right? I was catching up on my shows yesterday on Station 19, and that was a big theme, without giving any spoilers, about this aspect of where do we go even when it's uncomfortable. So with my work, I connect with descendants of the Yakima War that fought against my relatives. So we're historic enemies of the 1855 Yakima War. And why do I do this? This is the question I'm asked so many times. Even my chiropractor is like, you seem so positive and bubbly. Why would you go and research about this war? That's not necessarily what I would think of you doing. And I always gravitate back to this moment when I was 18, standing in Palm Springs, California. I had just been crowned Miss National Congress of American Indians. I attended this pageant as Miss Yakima Nation. To the surprise of many people, I was not what people would put in a box of a pageant girl. I was, a 3-sport athlete, and I, in fact, also had competed in a softball tournament right before that, and we won, but my leg was like bloody. So I competed in this pageant and won it, but my leg I had to soak in a tub. Anyway, when I got on stage and in front of hundreds of tribes, what my elders at that time had talked to me about is, they said, never forget the role of women in our tribe. And I really thought that they were going to start telling me all these stereotypical ways to be, or I was really uncertain. And they had said, don't forget that Yakima women fought in our war. And in fact, each day I can look out on a mountain that's named after a Yakima woman that fought in our war, even though this is not acknowledged by Western society, for the most part. There's not any history books about the Yakima War that are largely written by non-natives that talk about that. But we have that in our historical accounts, our Yakima historical accounts. And so I work to bring that information forward, because even in this time, even when we're looking 165 years past a war that very few people talk about, right? So a lot of people will even pass by markers and they're like, oh, that's where I usually stop to, because my lid fell off and there's that rock that I know I can pull off on. They don't know that that's an actual war marker of a battle site that people went through to defend this homeland, to defend their people. And I talked to my uncle that's now passed about this. And I said, how do I explain that Yakima women are strong and we're somebody that, are based in matriarchal society, that we wanted to defend our people, that were had been raped and killed by miners that were passing from the west side through up to Colville for gold mining. I was like, how do I explain that to people? There's so many historians, there's stacks of history books that I have that don't have this. I'm just somebody with a master's degree. I don't have these big, huge publication things. I don't have these, I don't know. In my mind, I think of people with like feathers writing. I don't have the fancy stuff. And he told me, he's a very simple man. He's a fisherman. And he said, Emily, if somebody were coming into your home and trying to hurt your kids, what would you do? Would you fight? And I said, yeah. He said, that's how you explain it. This is how you explain and bring our voices forward and our history forward, because the people need to hear it. That we're not somebody that are just going to stay and let things happen to us as a result of, basically trying to dehumanize us to extract resources. So one of the reasons why I researched the Yakima War is this is our first account of missing and murdered Indigenous women that was reported to the United States. Now, what was the United States' response to our first report of Yakima women and children being murdered? They started a 3-year war with us. And this is something that has never been revisited by them officially, other than a "we'll get back to you," a pause, a head nod. In fact, I spoke with the FBI and the White House this last summer, and I made that point. They were actually having a listening session about missing and murdered Indigenous women crisis. And I got a "we'll get back to you," because I really think that there's things that have happened and occurred in history that we do need to revisit, that we do need to set the record straight on. Now, when I look at the different web sources that I initially saw when I was researching these, I saw a lot of, this started a result of killing of miners, which means they erased our Yakima women from that history point. The fact that they were killed first, and then our people went to defend them and to make sure that they wouldn't harm anybody else. And there's a lot of different complicated policy involved in that regarding treaty signing and treaty ratification, which I won't go into detail here, but it is important to note that there were complex things going on at that time. But 165 years, like, we still aren't able to look back and get insight on that. And the reason why I also look back on history is it settles me a little bit. There's obviously a continuing ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. It's largely been called a silent crisis. And when we think about that term, when we think about this in the broader theme of what we're bringing here today, what are we silent about and why? I think about why this is a silent crisis. I think about why I go to get my teeth cleaned and my dental hygienist is teary-eyed, because she's a white woman that lived just miles off the reservation, had no idea these rates of missing and murdered Native women happened. That Yakima Nation has one of the highest missing rates for all tribes in Washington State, according to Washington State Patrol's recent listing. And I think back to the moment and times that I was in the car with my mother as she was driving along, detailing bad things happen to Native women, and you have to follow this long list of things to try to protect yourself. And I always had held that close. And I think back to those other women in my life that had talked about that and tried to bring that forward to me. And I now am looking at my daughters thinking, this is not a silent crisis anymore. We're bringing more awareness with this. And with that, we can show and detail out, I can use my fancy degrees that I still have loans on. I paid one off in a pandemic, which is really a random note, but I can research. I can see a pattern. So not only did we have the 1855 occurrence, we had another occurrence in the 1956, we have a 1910 article that details how you can marry a Yakima woman and how much her land could potentially be worth and how much you could then sell it for. And this was reprinted in different newspapers throughout the nation. So there's been an ongoing targeting of our Yakima women for 165 years. You know, there's a lot to cover and there's a lot to go over. I revisit this history so I can show patterns of an ongoing crisis and try to bring other people up to speed that that's not all the place that we always want to stay and keep. I go back to these teaching moments, and I'm not sure how many of you have ever had coffee with a Native or have gone to any of our ceremonies or any of our events. I don't know if you think that we sit around a campfire only to learn different information, or if you you take that example that I gave earlier about standing on stage and getting these grains of wisdom at a time that you continually reflect on throughout your life. You know, growing up, this is how I was raised. It wasn't just something that you got the entire story and you got the entire lesson throughout that time. It's something that you got continually. And then you were told that it's going to be your job to protect the resources for those not yet born. It's going to be your job to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. And so a couple weeks ago, my kids were learning how to roller skate and they were scootering around, and I was just taking the moment in. You know, there's times when I try to make sure I get my steps in and I get really particular about it some days, thinking I am some fitness queen. But and in the background, I saw the mountain named after the woman that fought in the Yakima War, Kasamwai. And she would later testify to the United States Congress about what the treaty meant and the intent. And I thought that when she actually fought in the Yakima War, she was about my daughter's age. She was a young girl, technically. And so I stopped them in that moment and I said, she fought for you to be here. There are prayers on this land that extend back to that time period of war. And they prayed for us to one day have a voice to speak and say what we couldn't communicate at that time. And so I thank you so much for this time to have this conversation and speak to you about a little bit about Yakima history and the war and just a little bit of my perspective.
Thank you so much, Emily. And again, if you want to get in touch with Emily for more historical perspective and learn more about her work, nativefriends.com. So it's very exciting for me to bring up our next speaker. She will be a familiar voice and probably a familiar face too. Risha Cosby is a proud Girl Scout mom. She's also been a longtime on-air radio personality here, radio programmer, content creator, and one of her many roles that I wanted to lift up is that she's the president of Yakima's chapter of the NAACP, which was established here in Yakima in 1944. So please join me in welcoming Risha Cosby.
Hello there. I'm hoping that you can see me because I cannot see you. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this event and for attending all of the Stand Up Against Racism events this week. As a past board president of the YWCA Yakima, this event annually means a lot to me. And being a part of these events has been a part of my life for the past 4 years, if not more. And thank you for supporting the YWCA Social Justice Committee. My name is Risha, and I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of sharecroppers and former slaves on both sides of my family, and the Blackfoot tribe on my maternal side. My paternal father fled Pulaski, Tennessee, home of the Ku Klux Klan, And he did this when he was a young boy. I would say he was probably 17 or 18 when he fled for his life. He was afraid of being hanged or tortured by the KKK. You don't know the history of Tennessee or the KKK. Pulaski is the birthplace, and Nathan Bedford Forrest still maintains a statue that you can see on the freeway. I think it's I-40. You can still see that. And it is appalling to me as a former and a lifelong Tennessee girl. Confederate flags were the way of life when I was growing up, to see white people having their rebel flags. The Dukes of Hazzard were heroes to many. I used to watch that TV show, and it was one of my favorites. I didn't understand any of the significance of the rebel flag. I liked that car. I like Daisy Duke, and I wanted to wear my shirts like her. So I would take my shirts and tuck them in through and try to pull up my shorts. And I was Daisy Duke, because that's what it was like when I was growing up. Tennessee is a state that's bordered by 7 southern states. And so when I was growing up as a child, we were surrounded by racism in the Deep South. And when I was growing up as a child, there were many instances where adults would be talking around me and my friends about racism, the overt kind and the covert kind. And they always told us kids, don't worry, all the old racist people are going to die off soon, and then racism will be over. Boy, were they wrong. So here we are in the year 2021, and it's been nearly 60 years since the civil rights movement of the 60s. When Congressman John Lewis passed away this past year, I found out that he used to live in Nashville. He was a part of the protests at Fisk University. I live not too far from Fisk University, and I knew it was a historically Black college, but I didn't understand the significance of it as a child. And knowing that I came from the place where civil rights leaders stood up for other people, it makes me proud, and it makes me want to use my voice. Even though I'm not in Tennessee, I'm still going to use my voice wherever I live to make sure that underrepresented voices will be heard, whether it's locally at City Hall, at in our Olympia, or in Washington, D.C. So again, here we are nearly 60 years since the civil rights movement of the 60s, and we're still dealing with a public health crisis of racism. Now, earlier this week, I grabbed a paper and a pen, and I noted all of the recent and very recent instances where we've had problems of people doing normal things while being Black. You may have heard about these: barbecuing while Black, shopping while Black, walking to your apartment while being Black, being a little girl having a lemonade stand while Black, going to your own apartment while Black, sitting and watching TV, eating ice cream while Black, sleeping while Black, cycling while Black, bird watching while being Black, playing with your toy by yourself at a table in the park and getting killed while Black, going to school while Black, walking down the street in your own neighborhood while Black, opening the door to your own house while Black, going to the Airbnb while Black, selling your house while being Black, buying a house while being Black, and having COVID in the hospital while being Black. And most recently, owning an expensive home and a car while being Black. We've had the police called on us. We've been killed by police. We have been abused by this country since we were stolen from our land, whether you say it was you were sold into slavery by your own African ancestors. Either way, we were sold into slavery and brought against our will to this country. And we helped build this country. We are not immigrants. We didn't have a choice to be here. And if you got annoyed hearing me tell you all of these things while being Black, just imagine how overly annoyed and frustrating, disheartening, dehumanizing it is to have to live with this mess. And I'm not cussing, so I said mess. Now, here in Central Washington and the Yakima area, I've recently noticed some instances of physical violence, not just about Black people, but against our Native American friends. In Sela, a man was beaten up. There was vandalism and graffiti slurs against an Asian buffet restaurant in Yakima. A man was verbally assaulted. An Asian man was verbally assaulted at Fred Meyer, but there are no laws on the books that will allow him to press charges. We've had examples in our own neck of the woods of blatant racism. At a high school in the East Valley area, I will say, there was a teacher that wrote the N-word on the chalkboard and tried to say it was about teaching the progression of the Spanish word for Black. Miss me with that mess. There was a high school basketball team that got basically chased out of town in Moses Lake area, called the N-word. They can miss me with that mess too. So here are some public crisis levels of racism that I've just told you. Now, there's a conversation happening right now in certain circles that says there's no such thing as systemic racism. The past attorney general even said that. And that's a bunch of baloney. I'll give you some examples where I have seen systemic racism in my 46 years of life. There's the shopping, education, the criminal justice system, housing, and even dating. For instance, shopping. As a Black woman, I already know that when I go into a store, I have to have my hands at certain places, sort of like a robot. It's sort of like how they tell you to put your hands on the 10s and 2s when you are driving on a steering wheel. It's like when you go in a store, you kind of have to have your hands at a certain level so that no one thinks you're about to walk up in the place and steal a bunch of stuff. And education. I've come to notice that our local education system is not set up to provide bilingual or multilingual immersion classes on the East Side like they do in other counties in Washington State or countries around the globe do. There's so many languages that we could be learning. We've got our Asian and Asian Pacific Islander. We've got our Native American languages. We've got so many languages. Spanish. We've got so many languages that all kids need to be learning. Black children are being left out of that bilingual and multilingual immersion experience in grade school. And unless the parents have the finances to enroll their kids in a private school that offers this, or their families live on the west side of the mountains in Central Washington, our Black children are suffering too. They will not qualify for those high-paying bilingual jobs, which will again create another barrier for them. In the criminal justice system, there are still people in jail to this day who are only there in the Yakima County Jail because they cannot afford the bail to get out before their trial. Trial dates are often weeks out from the date that you get arrested and put in the slammer. So say you were arrested for a nonviolent crime and your bail is $1,000. If you don't happen to have friends or family with that kind of money, you are stuck in jail until weeks, sometimes months later, until your trial. This is inhumane in my opinion. And this does affect a majority of people of color the most. The system was set up to keep inmates in jail longer. The system was set up to give longer prison sentences to people of color. You can look at the way that people with drug and alcohol addictions get sentenced longer terms than their white counterparts. In the 80s, we had the crack cocaine situation, and now with the opioid situation, now all of a sudden there's treatment options and drug courts. Black people didn't get that chance back in the 80s. I'm very thankful that it's about time we see addiction as not a crime, but a cry for help. We also do not have to go far to see the front page of the news online, on a newspaper about police brutality inflicted on people of color, affecting the Black population at much greater rates than others. On the job, I've heard statistics that show Black, Latino, and Native American women get paid less than their white counterparts. We even have advocated for a change of this business practice, but we have to talk to the right people. The right people are your legislators who can craft laws to prevent this practice from continuing. In housing, I currently live in a 1-bedroom apartment. It's the same apartment I've been in for the past 18 years. And a few years ago, a friend of mine was on the lookout for a 2-bedroom apartment for me and my daughter. And she told me the address and the price that the landlord had quoted her. So I called him up. I made an appointment to see the apartment. And when I showed up for a tour, the landlord told me that the price was actually $50 higher than what he had told the white people 2 days before. And then he told me to call him Mr., as though I was some young child living in the deep South in the 1950s. And I wish to this day I could go back in time and tell him where to go, but I kept my cool. And I should have turned him in to the Yakima Housing Authority or somebody, but I didn't know that I had that option then. But he charged me a higher rate than he was charging white people in Yakima. I still get mad about that if you can't tell. Finally, in the dating room, I've had several white mothers in Tennessee and in Washington State sit me down and tell me that they did not want me dating their sons. Not because they didn't like me personally, but because they didn't want to have mixed grandbabies. And those were their words exactly. So I'd say about the third or fourth time that I'd heard it, I was just like, as soon as she said, we need to have a talk, I'm like, I know where this is going. I already know. And this happens in other races too. So it's not just a white people thing. There's still a lot of anti-Black attitudes in the Asian community and the Hispanic community, and it hurts, it really hurts. And I know that I'm not the last person that this is going to happen to, so that makes me hurt, especially if you live in an area where there are not a lot of Black men to date, and then you get told you can't date the white ones, or the Latinos, or the Asians. So it really does hurt. And basically, these mothers are telling me that I'm not worthy as a human being, or as a daughter-in-law, or as the mother of their grandchildren, just because of the color of my skin. That's infuriating. So I've brought up all of these negative things, but it's important to address the negative so that I can tell you that I do have a semblance of hope that things will get better. First of all, a lot of us have been taking self-care. And by a lot of us, I mean people of color. Because as mentioned before, and the theme of this year's Stand Against Racism event, racism is a public health crisis in this country, negatively affecting our emotional, our physical health, our mental health. We're beyond exhausted. And this is how you can help invest in marginalized communities. You can volunteer with a local nonprofit that puts your great talents to use. Maybe you're gifted in accounting. I know there are a lot of volunteer organizations looking for treasurers or finance committee members. Perhaps you are a person that has a lot of community connections. There's always a need for someone to help a local nonprofit fundraise to pay for their overhead expenses for the year and whatnot. You can also invest your time in volunteering, writing letters to the editor on behalf of the marginalized community, or one of the most important things, speaking up when you are out and about and you see blatant or sneaky racism being foisted on a person of color. Use your voice to speak up. Empower people of color. Getting more voices at the table to represent different cultural perspectives will only make the board and the community so much better and stronger. Also, expanding public resources. Sometimes people of color get the short end of the stick when it comes to gaining access to broadband access or COVID vaccines, small business grants, startup capital to become business owners, tax help for small businesses, and adult apprenticeships if you're not a college graduate. Here's what I call Hope Part 2. It used to be completely impossible for me to envision a world without racism, but I'm starting to not feel that way anymore. And I'm going to tell you why. After the tragic murder of George Floyd that shocked the entire globe to the pandemic of racism, I've seen people individually working like they've never worked before to correct the wrongs of systemic racism. I've seen white people doing the work to change the way that they speak, act, and behave and think about Black people. I've seen Asian community doing the same and the Latino community doing the same. It's like a light switch has finally been turned on and a lot of people are starting to get it. So that gives me hope. There's also the word woke or being woke, and it's getting a bad rep lately because so many people are doing this work, peeling back these layers of racism, bigotry, and prejudice, and then they're calling it cancel culture. And that's become the next catchphrase. But really, cancel culture is just people saying enough is enough. We've got to stop treating people any old kind of way. Together as a community, we can continue to use our voice, our social media, our actions to challenge centuries of unfair social, economic, and political systems that have created vast inequalities for people of color in America. And I can finally start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I will say it is very dim, but I see a light. And that gives me hope. But I don't want to die before I see that hope, that light, that big bright light. In fact, we won't be around on this planet 200 years from now. So let's make our lives great while we still are here on this planet. And by the way, if you know how to make flying cars like the Jetsons, I want you to hurry up and get that done before I pass away on this planet, because I really want to experience that before I die. So in conclusion, I guess my whole point is, let's stop making life be so painful and toxic and miserable for each other. And I do subscribe to the mantra of mind your own business where applicable, but it's time to flip this country over like a lumpy mattress and get the endeavor to stand against racism in small, measurable ways and giant, life-changing ones. Reach out to organizations like the NAACP, the YWCA Social Justice Committee, the NativeFriends.com, which we just learned about with Emily, the Latino Community Fund, the Asian and Asian Pacific Islander Coalition, Yakima Pride, SELA Alliance for Equality, and many others that speak up for the voices of color in our local community. I think the Peacekeepers is what the Yakima Nation uses as well. So we need to level the playing field, not just for equality, not just for equity, but for restorative justice. And as stated on the YWCA USA website, I will end with the words, each of us can stand against racism by advocating for and supporting our communities in a meaningful way. So let's do it. Thank you.
Risha, thank you so much for the candid way you address what it's like in the Valley, and also for still finding a glimmer of hope and giving us all of us a challenge. Please keep your eyes open for ways that you can support businesses that are run by people of color. Please learn about microaggressions, and when you see your friends do them, tell them about it. Call people in. So our final speaker is Rocio Carrion. She's the executive director of I Am Empowerment and co-founder of Corazon, Yakima Valley Undocumented Immigrant Community Support Group. And we're very delighted to have her this evening. So please join me in welcoming Rocio Carrion.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank all of the BIPOC women who just spoke. I was getting a lot of feelings and emotions, so I appreciate you for speaking your truth and for being in this space. So the theme of this event is Yakima to me. Yakima to me. Yakima to me. Yakima to me. Yakima to me is hurt and it's also joy. Yakima is pain and it's also healing. Yakima is hate and it's also love. Yakima is behind and it's also progression. Yakima is grief and it's also hope. Yakima is ignorant and is also aware. Yakima is racist and it's also growth. Yakima is abandonment and is also support. Yakima is division and is also community. Yakima has hurt me and also supported me. Yakima to me is hurt, pain, hate. It's behind, grief, ignorance, racist, abandonment, division. And Yakima has brought me joy, cared for me, loved me, supported me. Yakima has grown and Yakima is my community. I struggled with this theme of Yakima to me at first because I was trying to figure out how to respond to it. to the point where I was thinking maybe this event isn't for me. But then I remembered what the event is about, stand against racism. And I quickly realized this is the event for me. I needed to speak my truth, be honest, authentic. So this is my radical honesty. I believe it's important to address how they both, the love and the pain, have played into how I feel that I fit into Yakima as a person of color, as a woman of color, as a Latina, as an undocumented immigrant. Existing in Yakima as a brown undocumented woman has been a challenge, but to exist as an educated and well-spoken brown undocumented woman has made it even more complicated. White people, especially white men, they don't like that. It's hard enough that I speak my mind as a woman, but you add in color and background in the mix, it's a threat to them. It's a threat to these people. I'm a threat, not because I'm in this country to steal land, to hurt innocent people or infect them with diseases. And I think it's interesting how Black and brown people have been labeled as dangerous. When you look back into centuries of how we've been oppressed, white people have shown repeatedly how dangerous, violent, and abusive they are towards us, stealing land, raping Indigenous and Black women, massacring Indigenous people over land, beating people of color. The list goes on over and over, and no one is labeling them. White people have historically shown how dangerous and violent they can be. I read somewhere that said, be thankful that Black people are only looking for equity and not revenge. Let that sink in. White people have held the power for way too long, and they definitely haven't used it for good. That includes white Christians too. You justify slavery and continue to justify racism today. So no, I am not a threat because I'm here to hurt innocent people to take something that belongs to them. I'm a threat because I represent change and I'm doing it. I bring change by speaking out against injustices in my own town, Yakima. I bring these conversations to the table and I hold politicians accountable. One example is that I was appointed to the City of Yakima Community Integration Committee, where by definition, we advise the city council on ways to improve community engagement, diversify the city government and workforce, provide additional review policies, ordinances, and resolutions, and provide a platform where residents can use their voice. This all sounds beautiful, but when it comes down to it, we're not there yet. Last week, as a chair of the Community Integration Committee, I spoke to the City Council about some very concerning issues that needed to be addressed in our town. In the end, we did move forward with one solution that eventually needs hundreds of other solutions. And I saw this as a small win. So I clap a little bit for that. However, I can't forget what one of the council members said. The topic was on addressing the lack of leadership and response taken by the council on the attacks of our BIPOC communities. She said, I'm sorry you're disappointed, but we don't always get what we want. We don't always get what we want. Just think about that statement for a moment. What does it sound like to you? Have you ever heard anyone tell you that before? Maybe a parent, a teacher? This isn't capricious behavior or a capricious ask we're asking like toddlers. What we're requesting is equity, honor, and respect. This is not about wanting something. It's about demanding justice for our BIPOC community. It's not a piece of candy we want and are upset we didn't get and are throwing a damn fit. It's about justice. It's about justice. It's about justice. This committee alone is a first step. And I've been saying this for the last 4 years I served on this committee, that our Yakima local government needs equity and inclusion training. And not just one they can check the box off and say, okay, we did it. We can move on from it now. Equity and inclusion is a lifelong journey. Diversity, equity, and inclusion work to be successful and meaningful. And it must be an ongoing and daily practice. Yakima needs more exposure on these uncomfortable conversations. If it makes you uncomfortable to talk about it, then you definitely need to be having these conversations and ask yourself why. Why they make you uncomfortable and why are you so reluctant to change? I heard this in one of my favorite shows and I couldn't put it better. We're not going to be able to fix this problem with just diversity committees, workshops, donating to a few places to clear your conscience. It's about changing the culture here. It's about being inclusive in the rooms where decisions are being made. We need to be at that table as BIPOC. Learn to listen, really listen. Listen to the people directly affected by racism, discrimination, and the ones who are being attacked. If your circle is only white, privileged people, your equity lens will only be one-sided and most often wrong. Challenge yourself. Did my speech make you feel empowered or uncomfortable? If it made you uncomfortable, that doesn't make you a bad person or a racist. Or maybe you are a racist, but haven't acknowledged it. I say lean into this uncomfort and explore why you're feeling uncomfortable and what you need to do to be better. You can still change. You can still make a positive impact in Yakima and work alongside your BIPOC community. We can still work together. I believe that. Learn to pay attention, learn to listen, lead alongside with us, not in front of us. We don't need white saviors. We need white allies that know how to use their privilege for good. For this speech alone, I'm gonna be honest. I'm going to be loved or I'm going to be hated. I'm used to it. For this speech alone, I'm going to be a threat to others and threatened by those threatened. I get threatened and nothing has been done. No justice has been done on my threats. For speaking my truth, for sharing my story, for wanting change. This is Yakima to me. This is my community. Esta es mi comunidad. You are my community. Tú eres mi comunidad. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocio, for speaking your truth and for being in community with all of us. I want to thank our speakers who each one has given us a much fuller picture of what it means to be in community by sharing what Yakima is to them and what Yakima can be. So many of our speakers had so much hope for the future. After the last, to be honest, as an American, after the last 500 years, but particularly the last 5, we've had a lot of reasons for despair. And so I want to thank everyone for bringing so much light. And those of you listening, you were part of that light too. I want to recognize Danny Aguilar and Lupita Carrillo, who are running the tech tonight and doing a great job. And one of our activities that had a really great turnout was we had 2 days of demonstration, and we have a part of one of the things that you can do when you're doing what Risha's talking about and saying, like, how do I address inequities in my daily life, is you can choose to support businesses that are owned by BIPOC, by Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And so we've purchased gift certificates as prizes for the best sign at our demonstrations and for the best chalk art from our chalk event yesterday at Single Hill. And those businesses are Fishbones, which is a Black-owned business, Doña Chelitos, which is Latinx owned, Vieras, Latinx owned, and Big Girls Bakery, which is Latinx owned. And I know the ladies and they're super duper nice. So I am now going to announce the winners. And if you are one of the winners, why, you will be getting gift certificates to some of these businesses. I'm going to do a drum roll on my clipboard. The winner for best chalk art, JP. Congratulations, JP. And the winner for best signs, we had a little controversy about this because we thought to ourselves, do we give the best sign to the best signs? Or do we make sure that it doesn't seem like we're doing any like double dealing? But the thing is that, and this is going to come as a surprise to you, Dory Peralta Baker, your organization brought the greatest signs. And so we are awarding you best sign. Thank you, every single one of you, for participating. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And please continue to stand against racism, continue to educate yourself, and continue to call people in to be allies, because some people don't know that they have a chance to do that. And they won't know until you tell them, hey, this is the thing that you did, and this is how you can stop. And this is how you can join me in this fight. We will all fight on and continue the YWCA mission, eliminate racism, empower women. Good night, and thank you all.